Hello and welcome everyone. So this video is a solution walkthrough to the first exam in Principles of Microeconomics. The coverage is principles, like core principles, supply, demand, equilibrium, elasticity, price controls, and taxes. And same with all solutions video, like I apologize in advance, the way I'm going to start this off is going really slowly over all the questions. So if you haven't already taken the exam or don't remember or want the opportunity at least to be able to stop the video and try the questions or take screenshots or whatever you want to do, I'll give you that opportunity here. So I apologize, there's 40 questions and it's going to take a little time to get through this. I want to make sure that I'm not, if I'm going to go through it slowly, I want to pause long enough where people are able to actually stop the video if they choose to. I don't want to just like do this sort of constant Star Wars scroll and then it's probably too fast to be able to actually, well, maybe it's not too fast to take screenshots. I don't know. All right, so we're about halfway through. So like I said, 40 questions. We got through question 20 right now. Here's 21, but it's cut off. So it's take a little while longer to get through 23, 24, 25. Well, 25 had multiple answers. No, multiple choices. None of these questions had multiple answers. There is a single correct answer for each of these. All right, so that's up to 28. Here's question 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. All right, here's next three, and then, of course, it's cut off on the next page. Like typesetting the exam, it's actually kind of a little bit of a task. Question number one, demand for a particular fast food chain inside an airport is less elastic than outside the airport because, well, this is really about our determinants of elasticity. And the primary determinant of elasticity is the availability of substitutes. So that's why it's B. Fewer choices within the airport past security mean more inelastic demand. You have less alternatives, you're more likely to accept the high price because you can't find an alternative. Other determinants of elasticity are the amount of time that you have to make a different decision, which is probably low if you'd have to leave the airport to go somewhere else. Also, the more narrow is the category, the more elastic is demand. Those other ones aren't as relevant here. So some of them are mentioned. It says necessities have less elastic demand. That's true, but we shouldn't think any of these things inside the airport are necessarily necessities. Specific brands tend to have more elastic demand than categories of goods. I mean, that's true, but it's not relevant to the question of airport dining. And consumer search makes demand more elastic. Yeah, that's also true, but because you can find more substitutes, but that's not what's going on in this question. So all are true, only B is relevant to the question of airport dining. Question two, suppose there's an increase in the price of cake. At the same time, there's a decrease in the price of electricity across the country. What happens to the equilibrium price and quantity in the market for ice cream? And so here, we care about the market for ice cream. We want to know what's the relationship between cake and ice cream, substitutes or complements, and what's the relationship between electricity and ice cream? Well, it's an input because electricity is important for producing and then maintaining, refrigerating ice cream. So if the price of electricity falls, we'll get an increase in supply of ice cream, other things equal. That'll be a decrease in price, it's like flooding the market, and increase in quantity. On the demand side, if they're substitutes, we'll get a rise in the price of cake, cause a decrease in quantity demanded of cake, and an increase in demand for ice cream. People buy ice cream instead of cake. So the price of ice cream rises, quantity rises. If they're complements, then the increase in the price of cake still causes a decrease in quantity demanded of cake, but now people also buy less ice cream to go with the less cake. And so we get a decrease in demand for ice cream, price will fall, quantity will fall. Now we're going to pair a demand shift with a supply shift and a demand shift with a supply shift to see which is consistent with A through D. A is inconsistent with complements because if we have complements, then we'll have an indeterminate quantity and price should fall. The decrease in demand leads for price falling. The increase in supply leads for price falling. But this is already just saying price should rise. So we know it's not A. B says equilibrium price falls. Yeah, that's consistent with both the demand decrease and supply increase, like I said, and the effect on quantity is indeterminate. Yes, because the supply increase will lead to an increase in quantity, and then the demand decrease tends towards a decrease in quantity. So we can't sort it out without more information. The effect on quantity is indeterminate. C, the equilibrium price and quantity rises if ice cream and cake are substitutes. No. So if they're substitutes, we're going to get an increase in demand for ice cream. So price rises, except for this is going to go in the opposite direction of our increase in supply, which will tend towards decreasing price. So the effect on price should be indeterminate. If we have substitutes, we disqualify C. Again, the correct answer is B. D says they're both normal goods, so the equilibrium price rises, but effect on price is indeterminate. No, like in order for normal to be at all relevant, we'd have to know something about a change in income, and we don't have anything there. So D is basically nonsense. Okay, so suppose you've paid $100 for student season tickets to the football games. It's halfway through the season, team hasn't won any games. You want to consider whether you'll attend any future games. What are the following costs or benefits you should consider? Well, the $100 you already spent on season tickets is a sunk cost. The time you spent going to the game instead of studying, that's valid to consider. The satisfaction you might get if your team wins a game, valid to consider. And the $5 you can make per game if you were to sell your remaining tickets, that's the opportunity cost of going to the game, is the ability to sell. That's also valid to consider. So the correct answer is 2, 3, 4 only. So option D. On the listing page for each item, Amazon often includes a section containing items that are frequently bought together with the item that you're currently viewing. Amazon treats the current item and the suggested ones as complements. That's almost the definition of complements, right? Used together. Grapes become more expensive in the market. Which of the following can explain this increase in price? Okay, so let's look at each of these. Farmers are now able to produce larger grapevine yields using the same inputs. So this is going to be an increase in supply that'll drive down price. Oh, that's a problem because we want to explain an increase in price. So it's not 1. 2, the government reduces fuel taxes that lowers transportation costs. Oh, that also increases supply. That also drives down price. So it's not 2. 3, grape production is the same, but wine production goes up, which requires more grapes. Wine producers are demanders of grapes, so an increase in demand, leads to an increase in price of grapes. So 3 works. And because E doesn't include any of those, we know it can't be E. Because E doesn't include C or 3 at all, we know it can't be E. 4 says consumers are purchasing fewer grapes as opposed to other types of fruits. No, that's a decrease in demand that would lead to a lower price, but we have to explain the increase in price. All right, so other things we could be considering there is we need something that would cause either a decrease in supply or an increase in demand. Number 6, if the government imposes a $15 tax on cheap wine and the price of cheap wine increases by $12, which of the following is true? Well, let's see. 1, the government will receive less tax revenue than anticipated. I mean, there's no way to assess that really, so can't really be 1. 2, consumers are paying more of the tax than producers are. Yes. So if the tax is $15 and the price increases by 12, we know the price paid by buyers has risen by 12, because then it'll be PB minus P star is 12 is the price paid by buyers, and then the price that sellers receive will fall below the equilibrium price, whatever that is, by 3, so that the distance between them is 15. Because we know by definition, the price paid by buyers, that's going to be the actual market price after the tax is applied, minus the price received by sellers is going to be the amount of the tax. So this right here is like a vertical height on the graph, if you remember. All right, so producers are paying more of the tax than consumers. No, see above. It's buyers are paying more. Another actually interesting question I could have posed here is demand is more inelastic than supply. Yeah, that would be true. Because if buyers are paying a larger portion, meaning there's a larger portion of the tax is explained between the distance between P star and PB. That happens when demand is more inelastic. If supply was more inelastic, sellers would pay bear a larger share of the tax. Okay, so correct answer was 2 only. Suppose we observe an increase in the price of ping pong tables and the quantity of ping pong tables bought and sold. Okay, so we have an increase in price and quantity. That's a rightward shift of demand. So we need demand to increase. We're looking for something that will increase demand. It says a violation of law, demand. I mean, there's no reason to think that could happen. We'd need kind of something else going on. Need more information. A decrease in demand for ping pong tables? Nope, because we need an increase in demand. Increase in demand for ping pong tables? Yep, that could do it. So it's 3 only. And then 4, a decrease in the supply of ping pong tables. Well, there's no reason to conclude this. So remember our 1 cause, 1 effect principle. So we'll have an increase in demand. That'll cause the increase in price and increase in quantity. other things equal on the supply side, we'll actually get an increase in quantity supplied, but there's no reason to infer anything about supply itself without another shifter. So the correct answer is C, 3 only. All right, so you're an economist for a state public education system or forecasting how much a future tuition increase would impact enrollment. Proposed tuition increase is 5%. Elasticity of demand for college education is minus 0.45. Use the formula for price elasticity of demand to calculate how the price increase for tuition would impact the quantity of students enrolled. Tuition increase would, decrease overall enrollment by 2.25%. A is correct. So the formula is percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. We can't use the midpoint formula or the point formula here because I just gave us percentages. So this is actually just like literally the definition. So we're going to have the elasticity minus 0.45 equals percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price, which was an increase of 5%. So this has a negative sign on it. This is going to be a positive 5. I'm just like multiplying through by percentage change in price. Gives me minus 0.45 times 5, which is going to be 2.25. And so it's actually a decrease in 2.25. So the tuition increase would actually decrease overall enrollment by 2.25, which is the interpretation of this right here. But the way that I set it up was so that there couldn't be any like increase, decrease, 2.25. Like it would have been like kind of a mean option would have been increase 2.25 or something like that, or increase minus 2.2. So that would have been confusing. So anyway, if you calculated the right number, you probably should have got this one right. Okay, so 9. Suppose the government believes the market equilibrium of childcare services is too high, so it imposes a price ceiling on the market. If the government imposes a price ceiling above the equilibrium price, what happens? Price ceiling above the equilibrium price. Oh, sorry. I can read. The government imposes a price ceiling below the equilibrium price. Okay, so a price ceiling below the equilibrium price is going to be a binding price ceiling. So at below equilibrium prices, we know we're going to have a shortage. We're going to have a larger quantity demanded than quantity supplied. And so, yeah, consumers are going to want to purchase more childcare services than at the equilibrium price. So it'll be 1 only. What are the other ones? Producers will respond to the lower price and offer more childcare services. No, that violates the law of supply. Matter of fact, at the lower price, quantity supplied is lower. Consumers will be able to purchase more childcare services at the lower price. No, they'll want to, but they won't be able to because there'll be a smaller quantity supplied. What's the quantity actually traded? The smaller of the two, QS in this case, is going to be QT, the quantity traded. The price ceiling will not be binding. No, price ceiling below the equilibrium is clearly binding. All right. Which of the following illustrates the law of demand? When Kit Kats are cheaper, Mary opts to buy more Kit Kats? Yeah, sure. Lower price, higher quantity demanded. Darren buys 2 pairs of jeans when they're $40, but only 1 pair when it's $60. Yep, that's following the same pattern. Layla buys less tea when the price of tea rises. Sure. Freya buys more donuts when the price of donuts is higher. Nope, that violates the law of demand. So the correct answer is going to be C, which involves just the first 3. At Trader Joe's, the price of chocolate chip cookies falls. As a result, you'd expect to see. All right, so the price of chocolate chip cookies falls. So price has changed. We're looking for quantity to change as a result. An increase in demand for chocolate chip cookies? No. To get an increase in demand, we need something other than price to change. A rise in the quantity demanded of chocolate chip cookies? Yeah. By the law of demand, that's what we expect, and B is in fact the correct answer. 3, a decrease in demand for chocolate chip cookies? Nope. Because again, we only have price changing. To get a decrease in demand, we need something other than price changing. And a drop in or fall in the quantity demanded of chocolate chip cookies? No, because that would violate the law of demand. Which of the following is correct about fixed costs? So they do not change with the level of production in the short run. Yeah, that's part of the definition of fixed costs. Fixed costs are those costs that are invariant to output. And the short run is the period of time or period of production when at least one cost is fixed. They include variable costs? Nope, false by definition. They're irrelevant to marginal cost? Yes, true by consequence of definition. We calculate marginal cost actually through the variable cost portion of total costs. You'll see that if you take the derivative of the total cost function, but we don't need that. We can just know that, well, Marginal cost is the incremental change in total cost when you produce one more unit of output, but fixed costs aren't changing. So it's irrelevant to marginal cost. They're present even when the firm is producing 0 units. Yes, true as a consequence of the definition. Sometimes students are thrown off if you see a table and you have to fill out the table with marginal benefit, marginal cost, total cost, fixed cost, variable cost, average total cost, and you're given a column that has marginal costs and only one entry when there's zero units produced under the total cost or under the fixed cost column. And the thing to keep in mind is, well, that's the fixed cost portion of your total cost function, and you can use that information to back out variable costs. Anyway, we didn't have to do that here, but that's something to pay attention to. All right, so holding all else constant, if people eat out more at expensive restaurants when they earn more, expensive restaurant meals are a normal good, right? So normal goods, definition of normal good is as your income rises, you increase your demand. And so the other one, goods with a congestion effect, nope, we have no information about what others are doing. That's actually required for 1 and 2. And it's not 3, inferior good, because, well, it was basically the definition of a normal good. So for inferior goods, it would have to be when the incomes fall, people buy more, or when incomes rise, people buy less. You're an economist for Quest Diagnostics, and you're analyzing the impact of competitor price changes. When LabCorp raises their price of standard blood panel by 10% and insurance companies have time to adjust, the quantity of blood panels demanded at Quest rises by 30%. What's the cross elasticity? So cross elasticity is the change in the quantity of product A divided by the percentage change in the price of product B. And so this is 30 divided by 10, which is 3. That's positive and greater than 1. So we know they're actually close substitutes, right? Regular substitutes or not very closely related substitutes would be positive and close to 0. If actually the cross elasticity was 0, we'd say they're independent goods. But the best answer here is going to be 3, close substitutes. 15, if the market supply is upward sloping because a higher price implies individual sellers can increase the output supplied. True. Government supplies more goods and services to the market. No, that's not implied by a higher price. More sellers can supply to the market. Yes. So this is the intensive margin. This is the extensive margin. Both together make B correct. So those are part of the rationale for law of supply. 2 is nonsense. 16, the price of coffee at a local coffee shop is $4. A Lodi is willing to pay $7 for a first cup of coffee. The marginal benefit to each additional cup of coffee falls by 2. How many cups of coffee should a Lodi purchase? 2. Marginal benefit of the first is 7. Marginal benefit of the second is therefore 5. Of the third, it's 3, but the price is 4. So marginal benefit is only greater than marginal cost through the second cup of coffee. When the price of ink pens decreases by 1%, quantity demanded increases by 0.44%. Price elasticity of demand for pens, well, we'll divide this quantity demanded by this percentage change in price. This is negative, so this is going to be minus 0.44. And of course, I gave us all with the same signs, just so there wasn't like an issue about signs. Because for price elasticity of demand, we know we're going to have, by the law of demand, a negative price elasticity, or in absolute value, positive elasticity. The sign is really important for income elasticity, obviously, and then for cross elasticity. If baseball bats and toothpicks are substitutes in production, a producer with a fixed set of resources will need to reduce the production of baseball bats when it produces less of the other good? No. So this would allow greater production of bats. So producer will need to reduce the production of baseball bats when it produces less of the other goods. No, this would allow actually greater production of bats. When it produces more of the other good, yes, because now there's fewer left over. And then obtains more resources. No, that'll allow greater production of both. So the only correct answer here is 2. That's option B. Farm Burger is a restaurant that only serves locally grown or raised produce and milk. Only one farm in the region supplies meat, and only one farm supplies produce. Which price elasticity of supply would reflect the flexibility of Farm Burger in the short run? 0.5. So we'd expect pretty inelastic supply here. This would be elastic supply. C and D are not price elasticities of supply, because by the law of supply, we're expecting price and quantity are going to be positively correlated. Also, it doesn't reflect what the sign that we're going to get from this. So an inelastic, because we only have one farm supplying produce, price elasticity of supply as A. So that's this right here. Which factor could explain an increase in the supply of footballs this month? So an increase in input prices. Okay, so I'll just do it just as I've been doing. Which factor would cause an increase in the supply of footballs this month? Well, an increase in input prices would actually cause a decrease in supply. Expectations that the price of footballs will rise next year will cause a decrease in supply because we are going to, and we're interested in what happens this month because we want to increase our quantity supplied in the future when the price actually rose. An increase in the price of footballs, well, this will cause an increase in quantity supplied. A decrease in the cost of materials used to produce footballs. Yes, this is a decrease in the price of an important input that would cause an increase in supply this month, which is what we're after, so the correct answer is D. The pair of items most likely to have a negative cross elasticity. Negative cross elasticity means complements. That'd be hamburgers and ketchup. So coffee and tea are commonly expected to be subs. Mustard and aspirin are assumed to be unrelated. Cashews and peanuts, I mean, maybe we could talk about them being complements, except I'm asking most likely, and most likely is definitely hamburgers and ketchup, whereas you could make a better case for cashews and peanuts being substitutes. All right, so which of the following factors would cause an increase in the supply of Rice Krispies? An increase in the price of Rice Krispies, well, that causes an increase in quantity supplied. Price changes, only quantity can change. A cost-saving improvement in the technology of cereal production, sure, that will cause an increase in supply. A reduction in the price of sugar, sure, that'll also cause an increase in supply, change in the price of an important input. Expectations amongst producers that the price of Rice Krispies will fall in the future. So that will cause an increase in supply because we want to unload all of our Rice Krispies before the price in the future is smaller, at which point we'll have a smaller quantity supplied. So the correct answer here is D. What happens to the equilibrium price and quantity when demand increases and at the same time supply decreases, but the demand shift is larger than the supply shift? Okay, so if demand shift is larger than the supply shift, I can forget about the supply shift. So now I just have to pay attention to what's happening in demand. Demand increases, so I need price and quantity to rise. Okay, so equilibrium price falls, nope. Equilibrium price rise, yep. Equilibrium quantity falls, nope. Equilibrium price rises, yep. So it could be 2 and 4. It's the correct answer. That's what I say here. Basically, we ignore the supply effect because we're told demand shifts further, so it's as if supply doesn't move in terms of what happens to the comparative statics of the equilibrium. A seller in perfectly competitive market can do which of the following? Raise the price? No, we're assuming in perfect competition we're price takers. Increase the amount it individually supplies? Yeah, in fact, it's going to adjust its output to bring its marginal cost equal to the market price. Decrease its marginal cost? Yeah, it can do that by producing less. Leave the industry? Sure, it can do that as well. So the correct answer here is D. A tax on buyers in the sense of statutory burden. So a tax on buyers will model with a leftward shift of demand, right? Statutory burden. Economic burden would mean buyers have more, or demand is more inelastic, but statutory burden is saying like, how are we going to model this? Who's literally responsible for paying the government? So that's going to be buyers. It'll be a leftward shift of demand. So the correct answer is C, option, or item 3, option C. When looking at a demand and supply curve, if the tax is implemented on a buyer, the vertical distance between the old and new demand curve at the new equilibrium quantity will be equivalent to the amount of the tax. And I kind of mentioned that before when we had that question with 15 and 12 and 3. The vertical height is not the economic burden of the tax on buyers. That's the distance between the price paid by buyers and the original equilibrium price. It's not the economic burden on the seller. That's the difference between the original equilibrium price and the price paid by sellers. Price of the item, no. The price of the item is typically the price paid by buyers. That'll be the new equilibrium price. So it's one only. Okay. Price of Tide falls and the demand for Purex rises. We can conclude that Tide and Purex are complements, substitutes, Purex are substitutes, or normal good. What if I don't know what Tide and Purex are the substitutes or complements? Turns out it doesn't matter. So if the price of good A falls and the demand for good B decreases, then we know good A and good B must be substitutes. So it's going to be 3. Following the rational rule, economic surplus is maximized when 2, marginal benefit equal marginal cost. Actually, if total benefits equal total costs, economic surplus is 0. if marginal benefits exceed marginal cost, you want to do more. And so it's actually just going to be B2 only. Okay, that's this right here. Suppose the demand curve for monthly subscriptions to Netflix has shifted to the right, which could have caused this. A fall in the price of Netflix subscriptions, nope, that'll cause a change in quantity demanded. An increase in the price of Netflix subscriptions, nope, that also cause a change in quantity demanded. An increase in the availability of Netflix subscriptions, and suppose we were to say this increases demand, well, let's see below. And then suppose there's an increase in income of consumers. Sure, if Netflix is a normal good, that could certainly cause it increase or cause a shift to the right. 1 and 2 are definitely incorrect because they confuse changes of quantity demanded with changes in demand. 3 or 4 could arguably either be either or both be correct, but amongst the answer choices, 3 is only paired with 1, which makes C false because that's not going to happen because that's a change in quantity demanded is what we'd get. So if we really believe 3 increases demand, then 1 is impossible actually, because we'd get an increase in demand, which would not lead to a fall in subscriptions price. It would actually lead to an increase in subscription price. Consider the following market. So demand is given by prices equal to 10 minus Q. Supply is given by prices equal to 2 plus Q. A price ceiling is imposed at a price of 4. Does what? Well, we have to find the equilibrium to know if this is going to be above or below the equilibrium, and therefore if it's going to be binding or non-binding. So actually, you could remember from class the equilibrium quantity was 4, and then the equilibrium price is 6, or you could just calculate this algebraically. Because the equilibrium price is 6 and the price ceiling is imposed at 4, then we know we have a binding price ceiling, which creates a shortage. So the correct answer is A. A decrease in the supply of cherries in northern Michigan will cause, so we're going to get a leftward shift in supply of cherries. So that'll definitely give an increase in equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity of cherries, and a decrease in supply of cherry pies. Why? Because an increase in the price of an important input, cherries, is going to decrease the supply of cherry pies. Increase in demand, so the correct answer is A. An increase in the equilibrium price and decrease in equilibrium quantity of cherries, and an increase in demand for cherry pies. No, the increase in price of cherries should not affect demand for cherry pies, right? The one cause, one effect principle again. Increase in demand for cherry pies, nope. The price increase would cause a change in quantity demanded only. A decrease in demand for cherries, nope. That's going to cause a change in quantity demanded only. So we get a decrease in supply. So the logic was, we're going to get a decrease in supply, so price is going to rise. Quantity is going to fall for cherries. Cherries are an important input in the production of cherry pies, so that's going to lead to a decrease in supply of cherry pies. If Ben is operating a pretzel stand and notices at the current price demand is inelastic, which of the following is true? If demand is inelastic, you can raise price to increase revenue. Not lower price to increase revenue. That would happen if demand is elastic. We don't know anything about if pretzels are an inferior good without knowing anything about the income elasticity or what's happened to consumer incomes. And no, it's not that the market for pretzels isn't following the law of demand. We don't know anything without being able to see what's happened to the quantity demanded in response to changes in price. If the true hourly wage is $17 an hour and the local government imposes a minimum wage of $15 an hour, that'd be a binding price floor. Minimum wage is a price floor. If the equilibrium is, non-binding price floor. If the equilibrium wage is $17 an hour and the minimum wage is below that, then what's happening is government is saying you can't pay anybody less than $15 an hour, and everybody says, well, great, because the price actually is $17 an hour. So there's no effect on the labor market because the minimum wage of $15 an hour would be a non-binding price floor. It's below the equilibrium, so non-binding. If it was a price ceiling, it would be a binding price ceiling, but this is a price, minimum wage is a price floor. A large number of people decide to take up the sport of pickleball. This is best described as causing an increase in demand for pickleball and related equipment. Not decrease in supply for pickleball. There's nothing in the statement that would suggest that. Not an increase in supply of tennis courts. If anything, we'd get a decrease in supply of tennis courts. Matter of fact, some tennis courts being converted into pickleball courts. An increase in quantity demanded of pickleball equipment. No, that's not the best answer. We're getting an increase in demand for equipment due to an increase in the number of buyers in the market. In the market for organic beef, which of the following would cause a price increase? So suppose the price of chicken increases. Sure, that can cause an increase in demand if beef is a substitute for chicken. Doctors tell patients that beef is full of saturated fat that causes heart attacks. Well, no, that would cause a decrease in demand. If the prices of grass and organic corn used in the production of beef increase, this would cause a decrease in supply. If there's a movement in the US towards veganism, that'd cause actually a decrease in demand. We need something that's going to cause a price increase. So to get a price increase, this cut off what I had written about this. All right, so one only, no, because it could also be three. We're looking for something that could cause a price increase, and we can get a price increase from an increase in demand, which could be number one. We can also get a price increase from a decrease in supply, which could be number three. And so it's not one only, because it could also be three. It's not two, because that's actually going to cause a decrease in demand. It's not three only, because it could also be one. One and three only, yeah, because it could be either one or three could do it if we would need an increase in price. All right, so over the past several years, sushi has become increasingly popular among consumers. This means that sushi has increasingly popular. So this is consumers getting more interested in whatever the product is. So that's an increase in demand for sushi. So C is the best answer. So maybe we could describe this as a change in the number of buyers or a change in tastes and preferences. Suppose the government places $10 per month tax on phone usage. If demand for cell phone is relatively but not perfectly inelastic and supply is relatively but not perfectly elastic, the price of cell phone usage will increase but by less than 10. Right? So this is the tax question. The idea is like you can't just add the tax to the previous equilibrium price. What's going to happen is the new equilibrium price is going to rise, but by an amount less than the tax, and the distance between the price paid by buyers and price received by sellers will be the size of the tax, will be $10. And so PB minus PS is the tax, if you look graphically, but PB minus P star will be less than the full tax. And then P star minus PS will be less than the full tax. The sum of PB minus P star and P star minus PS, if you just add that up, it's actually just this right here, is the whole tax. And so anyway, or you could look graphically and you'd see it's going to increase by less than the amount of the tax. The opportunity cost of a decision, may include which of the following types of costs? Out-of-pocket financial costs? Yep. Foregone financial costs? Yep. Some costs? Absolutely not. And non-financial costs? Yeah. So we're looking for option C, which involves all but item 3. If Ben buys the exact same amount of gasoline each week, regardless of price, Ben's demand for gas is perfectly inelastic. That's basically the definition of perfectly inelastic. For inferior goods, a tax cut on consumer income will lead to a rise in their demand. Nope, because the tax cut will lead to an increase in income, which would lead to a decrease in demand for inferior goods. Tax cut on consumer income will lead to a fall in their demand. Yeah, that was actually option B. Change in consumer income don't affect their consumption. No, that's kind of the definition of inferior goods, is changes in income is definitely going to affect their consumption. Most consumers would choose to purchase regardless of income changes. No, that'd be like a necessity maybe, but not an inferior good. Lower taxes mean higher income, so a decrease in demand for inferior goods. Okay. Very good. So that brings me to the end here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this helped you out, and I will see you next time.